and welcome to a special interview by Skills Rediscovery. Skills Rediscovery is Asia's fastest growing multilingual skills education platform for sharing and acquiring skills with a wide range of courses, from digital marketing and machine learning to public speaking, soft skills like languages, German, even guitar and Bharatnatyam. The National Education Policy 2020 talks about integrating skills education with regular academics, and Skills Rediscovery does this through live courses in a language of your choice. So this is an online platform where we connect you with the right kind of people to help you develop the skills for 21st century market. Today we have Mr. Matthew Kurian. He is the head of department for graphic design at MIT Institute of Design, Pune. Working in the publishing industry, Mr. Matthew is skilled in photography, branding, and typography. He's a keen education professional with an MA in museology from the National Museum Institute, New Delhi. Museology, by the way, is the study and practice of organizing and arranging and managing museums. Welcome, Mr. Matthew, and let me start by asking you about museology because this is a rather unheard of stream.
So museology is basically understanding museums as a place. Everybody knows what a museum is. So museum as a professional has to document artifacts that is in the museum. So I come from the National Museum Institute, and National Museum Institute is in the National Museum in general. And National Museum has the biggest and the most important cultural artifacts of our nation. So everything from your dancing girl from the Indus Valley civilization, your Raja from the Chola dynasty, you think of any object from historical importance and National Museum has it. So it is actually a profession to maintain your cultural artifacts, document them properly, and preserving and conserving them in their status. So that is what museology is. So that's about it actually. And it's a master's course.
Okay.
It also has it's a direct course where you can actually continue your PhD. It's actually a 3 years course. It has an embedded MPhil course within it. So you don't have to apply separately for PhD. You can actually continue. It also comes under the UGC NET. You'll also find that course in the museology. It's part of it. So I'd also cleared my UGC NET at that point of time in 2003.
Great. Tell me your professional journey. It's been a different kind of thing. So how did you land in this education sector?
Yeah, so it's actually in many ways something that it didn't require any planning. So I was not planning my career. I was not looking to become an educator when I was doing my studies. So I have a very different journey that was very different. So I did my primary schooling from Bahrain in the Gulf. All typical Malayali have their parents. My mother was a staff nurse, so she was in this thing. My father was a civil engineer. So that's very typical. If you go to Kerala, you would know that every third person has been to the Gulf. So my primary education was Bahrain. Then I came to Delhi, and around 11th and my 12th. I did my schooling through correspondence because I was into sports, and my relatives thought that I should be in it very seriously. So, and sports in Delhi was quite good, and my school also supported it. And then during that time, one of my friends also introduced me to fine arts. So at that point of time, I didn't know about NID, National Institute of Design. There were a lot of people who did from College of Art Delhi, and there were a lot of people who I knew who were from fine arts. So I joined Applied Art. So Applied Art is basically a part of fine arts. Fine arts has painting, sculpture, and applied arts. Applied art is actually oriented towards advertising. So at that point of time, if I do BFA, I should also be employed at that point of time. You need to think about that kind of a skill. So applied art was a skill where and there was no computers at that point of time. It was all hand done.
Okay.
Yeah, so computer only came in around 95, 96. where I joined a multimedia, Aptech Multimedia house time पे, and they had started their course with Apple products.
Okay.
So I got introduced there. Then I did my BFA. In my BFA years, I resonated with reading about theories of art and history, art and design. So, and it was very clear. People were working and they were skilled hand-wise. I used to read a lot on theories of art and design. So one of my senior faculties told me that you should actually do museology because you have the understanding of art and design. You should be looking at more, what should I say, more stimulating for you. It will be more stimulating because then you will see the object by itself, you'll be able to interpret it, you'll understand how to keep it. So then they introduced me to museology, and then I actually moved around that space. And within that, around that time, I had also applied for various places to work. So I don't know whether you know Ibrahim Al-Qazi. He's passed away a few years back. Was the director of National School of Drama.
NSD.
NSD. And he had a huge collection of photographs. So I wanted to intern with him that time. And I was also started my PhD. So I went to him to work. I did some months with him and he introduced me to the entire collection. But around that time, again, I got married and money requirement was there, and there was a lot of, that scenario changed for me eventually. So I got into a proper job, and that's where I joined Dorling Kindersley, DK. So Dorling Kindersley, actually, everybody knows Penguin Books.
Yeah.
So within Penguin Books is a very big company across the world. Within Penguin Books, they had one publishing unit which was in London. So I was there for 10 years. And I had learned the best of design. That was actually my design training. The best practices in design training to the international standards, where I had created numerous books, numerous projects. And it was constant training for us. Every year we used to get training. Every second year we used to go even to London to get trained. And when I reached the level, I also used to train my designers and my juniors. So at that point of time, training came to me very, very casually. I was enjoying it, and that actually eventually then took me to this course of teaching. So after DK, I joined an outdoor sports magazine. Then I joined because after DK, because I was in sports, so I resonated with working with a sports company. Sports magazine company, and then I joined a corporate because I thought I should get into some kind of corporate company, and that opportunity came at the very big point of time, and EY contacted me and I got into EY. So EY is one of the biggest, the big four, big five of the financial audit companies. Worked with them. Then Classmate Notebooks in Chennai had contacted me. So while I'm doing all this, I'm constantly working on many projects simultaneously. So as a designer, you are not only working for a place, you are constantly getting projects to work in. And in most of these companies where you work as designers, you are allowed to work for other companies, which is unlike other companies, where you work in company 9 to 5, you only work for the company. You're not doing anything else. The only thing that you can do is go and exercise or do something personal, but work-wise, you're very limited.
Correct.
In design, it is not like that. In design, when I was working with DK, another publishing company had a book called The Style of India. They had approached me saying, "Can you do this book for us?" So I said, "Yeah, okay." And then that book actually eventually was a big, fat book, profitable book, and it actually also won the Design Excellence Award. CIA Design Excellence Award later in 2007. So then I had worked with Classmate. So Classmate was also a difficult, for them it was a business problem. The business problem was that they had this notebook which had landscapes. I don't know whether you remember, Classmate used to have landscapes on the cover.
Yeah.
And when I joined in, I introduced them to licensing, which was a very regular thing in Dorling Kindersley. So they were also working on in that this thing. So I understood licensing very easily because it is a regular thing in many companies where they work with, say for example in DK, they used to work with the Lucas Entertainment, Star Wars licensing company. They used to work with all the books that were done in DK was just licensing. So Classmate got into license with the Disney licenses. Now they have doing a lot of Marvel things on them.
Okay.
So I'm also introduced them to many other opportunities as far as assets are concerned. And after doing that, what really happened is one of my friends in DK was teaching in NIFT, Chennai. And he told me to come into the classroom and introduce my photography work, which I was generally doing at that point of time. I was posting on Instagram. And he said, why don't you come and talk about this series of photography that you're doing? Talk to our students. So I went to NIFT and I spoke about it. And then there was a series of conversation that happened afterwards, which I thought at that point of time, I kind of thought this is actually a change that I want to get into, is to teach and mentor students. And many of my senior friends and seniors of my company and people who were very close to me told that this is actually a right career choice because you always had mentored many people or have taught many people, and that came very naturally to me. So then I got into MIT ID, and so with all that industry experience, I'm trying to induce those experience in all the courses that I'm doing here.
That's it.
So, yeah. So, and also design education is very different from general education because design education requires you to be a practitioner of design, because what you practice is what you preach here. You cannot just be giving lectures on one product and not do it yourself and ask students to do it. You should be able to do it, show it, and then they learn from it. So I'm also constantly learning. So I'm not looking at graphic design. There are many opportunities for us where we are, I'm right now working on a set of toys that we've made for a competition. I don't know whether you've heard of this Toycathon, which the central government of India had started.
Okay, Toycathon.
Yeah, Toycathon. And we pitched some 10 ideas, and I think 4 of those ideas got in the finals. And one of those toys were based on rockets and spaceships, and we wanted to bring out ISRO as a space as an intervention, and that got selected. So now we are working on the final round. So we are working on those toys. So it's not only graphic design; it's about you're constantly evolving as a person. You're constantly, evolving as a designer or as a communication designer. So yeah, so that's my entire journey.
So design thinking is really important for today, right? In today's world. Tell me about how good are Indian schools at providing foundations for design thinking?
So I think for design thinking, it's definitely happening in various IB schools to start with. I'm saying this with experience because I've seen my son was in one of the IB schools, and the design thinking aspect of thinking, evaluating your scenario, try to prototype it, then executing it, and then reevaluating it and rethinking this entire cycle of design thinking is generally taught in IB, where they do multiple project works. For example, they were learning about climate.
Okay.
And they were introduced to say thunderstorms, and so the way they taught was basically is to develop a small thunderstorm, the phenomenon of thunderstorm in their scenarios, like to use different ways of like use a balloon, induce a thunderstorm in a mud situation, and how it becomes a whole this thing. And so they're understanding it by seeing how it happens. And then when they see these live videos and they see these aspects of it, then they understand it not by heart or by mugging, but they understand the phenomena. For them to explain it naturally in their language, it becomes easier. And that is an aspect of design thinking, is to actually simulate that situation and understand the nitty-gritties of the problem and trying to resolve it. Which I think in many ways, many schools are actually doing it with teachers who are getting very involved in these courses. So I remember one of my son's social studies teacher was talking about farming and how they took the entire batch of students to a farm to make them understand as to what does a farmer do, what is the soil, how do they keep changing the soil after every season for different crops, and what are the crops used, etc. was introduced to them very nicely. So though it is not there in the curriculum, it is the compassion of certain teachers who will introduce or will bring in this aspect in the classroom. But if it comes in as a structure to teach them in this practical fashion, in this design thinking scenario, all the problems of students failing because they don't know what they're writing. They're just only writing it for passing or just mugging them up without understanding the concept will all be all clear. And that is what everything, So there are many ways, actually right now, even education is going through now this online scenario has opened up a lot of things for design schools to their ways of teaching. It cannot just be one-sided conversation where one is only speaking and the second person is only absorbing. It's going to be a conversation.
Yeah.
So I think, but it's not all that bad in many ways when we think of it. But when we actually go into these small schools and see how certain teachers, like for example, there are examples of WhatsApp forwards on how teachers are teaching mathematics in a very interesting fashion. So, but it is not infused into the education system as to this. These are the methodologies. Yeah. No, even in the methodologies of teaching. Your education colleges where they are taught B.Ed and M.Ed into experimentation of education as to how to. Let's not even say how to teach. Just like how to introduce a concept to a person of a certain age. How do you put them into that situation? A 3-year-old will understand differently from an 18-year-old. An 18-year-old might not understand the way the 3-year-old will understand. So that aspect, I think it will come. It is there. There is no way but we have to change it to be introduced. One of the ways is design thinking, but there are many other methods, and I think that is happening sometimes.
Yes, you also talk about the design for change philosophy. Can you tell us more about that?
So, design for change philosophy is, I won't say it's a recent phenomena. Ever since design was being taken in historically, if you go back, and I'll not make it into a big lecture of design education. So, initially when design education was initially started, the start was in Germany, Weimar. There's a school called Bauhaus. So when they were thinking of bringing in design education, they were thinking of an utopian society where everybody is equal, where everybody is skilled at the same level. It also was talking about this industrial economy that came into where everybody needs to be employed. It talked about against it. It said, you should be able to live your life without working for someone or someone's dream, but work on something that you have and your skill have, and you can live your life like that. So in that fashion. And that is how design education had that knack in it from the start itself. So if you look at the role of IDC, which is the IIT, IDC Design School, or the NID, and the way they taught was not to get employed. It was to actually go and connect with the society, go and document the society, go and work with problems that people have, and try to, I'm not saying solve, but at least resolve smaller issues that can be resolved by design thinking.
Small interventions.
Small interventions. Like for example, there are many. There's actually a course which is conducted by one of our very senior faculty members, which I also get involved, and there are a lot of projects that also happen simultaneously. Is on social change, social impact. And we also introduce. There are also small courses like ITS where we send them to suburban spaces, rural places, that they go and observe what is happening. So we keep them very aware of what is happening socially, and they come back with projects where they are solving small problems. For example, there was one of my MD students who came to me and said, let's make a braille book for people who can see, so that they understand their people who have vision disabilities, and so they can learn simultaneously as to what empathize with the person. See, in normal situations, our students who can see, or people who can see, parents get involved with them because they are able to teach the students because they can see and they know the same education. But it's with braille, it's different. So there's a certain mindset to it. Ki, only the person who is learning braille will understand braille, but the other person can also understand. The people who see it should also understand, should empathize with the person, or should be able to educate. And that at least a conversation of having. So that was a very good project. Currently, one of my students is working with a very interesting, and it's a self-initiated project. It's no course. We also have a course which is called as self-initiated project, which they come and go and look out for a certain problem, and then we try to resolve it. So the student is himself colorblind, and he wanted to create a coloring set for children where he faced a problem when he was small. So he's created a set of creating a set of colors, and he wants to do some kind of product where they can resolve this aspect of how to color. What is blue? So he is creating some system for the colorblind children to understand how to color and how to use certain color. And there's a broad thinking. I don't want to give out details here, but so these are some of the projects where we go and try to change around, the utopian concept of working with the society on small interventions, like you said, small interventions where we can, with a small intervention, with a small plug change, there's a small change.
Correct.
And we have a lot of support from people, NGOs who come in. There is a lot of conversation on gender-based education. There is a lot of conversation on sex education. There's a lot of, also in design education, everything is very broad. It's not like schools. It's not like regular colleges. We speak about that as things that generally in society is considered to be scandalous. We take away the scandal out of their lives. We say, where if you have to make a communication campaign for people who are sex workers, and you want to to add a point where you want to communicate a certain, a design, you yourself should not be biased. You yourself should be broad-minded as a person to bring in that communication. Otherwise, it will get reflected in that communication.
Correct. That exactly was my next question. What all is covered under communication design?
Yeah. So broadly, if you look at the terminology as far as communication is concerned, everything that we undergo, in a sense, in the form of a general communication, like this is by itself is a two-way communication, and how to even look at to improve this type of communication. Anything which is done. So it could be a website, it could be an app, it could be different interventions. It can be generally about books and experiences. But when we put design in it, it means that there is always an intended solution. It cannot be very it has to resolve a problem.
Oh, correct.
So when we say communication design, we are empathizing with the user. So for example, if there is a communication design for the rural people of Haryana, and we are creating a set of posters for them to understand, say for example, understanding girl-child education. Okay. And now to empathize with the users, posters may not work. We will resolve that there is maybe a street play in their local language might be a great solution. Or a certain communication which a certain community or certain school where they address to, and we will look at a communication solution which only empathizes with that community at that point of time. So it could be anything under the sky. So it could be, like a small WhatsApp video. Everybody wants to see a video on WhatsApp. So imagine one person is just circulating WhatsApp videos on girl education across the community, and then maybe showcasing it in the evening as a very comical, because the Haryanvis are very witty, so their language is also very different. So you want to kind of so those are the kind of things that comes into communication. So it's purely communication with an intention and how we design it for a specific audience, and that is the entire strategy of how to give out a communication to a situation. So under that, anything can come in. Motion graphics, films, animation. Although we have different animation departments, but the strategy of how to develop, how the tone of voice has to be developed, those all things are strategized by communication design. Normally when we say communication design, people think it is graphic design and logo and branding, poster, but now the world has changed. Now it is even by creating an Instagram post or an Instagram reel, in many ways can be a solution. You also by creating a social network by itself for a community can also be a solution. So it's purely communication nowadays. So my students have worked with their projects revolve from. So some of my students are actually working with a lot of Netflix producers to create titling sequences. So one of my students, I can name him, Jishnu Chatterjee. He's the one who made that Harshad Mehta's scam introduction video. I don't remember the Netflix.
It was on Netflix. Yeah, recently.
It was on Netflix. So he created that introduction, this thing. So, and then there are some of my students who are working with this singer called Pratik Kuhad, who has created this. He's a musician. He writes a lot of brilliant songs. And then they use some of my students' animation, create this poetic lyrical video. Then some of my students are actually working with architects to bring in a lot of apps for citizen partnerships, So yeah, so anything that you think around comes around, and all these opportunities, because we work in this thing, it all comes to us. We are not looking out for it because we broadly look at everything. So most of these projects actually come to us saying, we have this problem. Can you resolve this for us?
Lovely. To ask you one last question, what is the importance of skills education? Now, that's pretty different from the design education, but what is the importance of skills education at college level?
Yeah. So, the college that we have is MIT ADT University. Within our university, we have an engineering college, we have architecture, fine arts college, we have catering technology, we have the MANED, which is actually the Merchant Navy.
Yeah.
So, within all these spaces of skills, design education is it has a different take on skill. When design education, we induce cognition as skill, is to understanding as a skill. So I'll give you one example, is that we introduce them to softwares that are basic in nature. For example, if we say for designers, if we say there is a vector-based software and there is a raster-based and image-based, there could be a 3D-based software. So we only give the basics of these software, and the students, they go and explore different softwares. So we give them a formula this is how we look at, this is how the software looks like. What can you do in this software to resolve your outcomes that you want? So based on one vector software, they're able to go into Illustrator. If we've said Illustrator, then they go to multiple vector softwares. If it's image with Photoshop and everything, then they go to different that kind of thing. Within even 3D, now you have for product which is more engineering based, they get into Rhino and other 3D softwares, and we have After Effects. So these are all taught in a very smaller capsules. They develop that skill themselves, and if they have any problem, then they come back to saying that we have a specific problem in this software. How do we resolve this? So the teaching methodology, though primarily, if you look at it from a broader this thing, it is actually skill based, but it is not executed in the way how a skill will be taught. Like for example, we say draw straight lines. Give me 20 sheets of just drawing straight lines. It is because later they'll have to draw the straight line for the product. So that is induced in the foundation year and different this thing, but their usage is based on the recognition.
Correct.
So primarily it is heavily skill based because for you to understand the material of, say for example, material of a mug, ceramic. So they'll have to understand the material, they'll have to see how it is produced, and they will go into the details of a general science-based or engineering-based methodology of understanding different properties, chemical or whatever. That is there, but it's a very broad way of teaching. So it's very design thinking based methodology where we ask them to think, ideate, prototype, execute, re-evaluate, and then the entire cycle of design thinking. So that is induced in our education.
Great. Thank you so much, Matthew, for interacting with us. This was a great session, and I hope that all our viewers will definitely learn a lot from your experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think it is also important that when people see this video, they understand what goes into design education, and especially the parents of many students who want to take design. Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Lovely interacting with you.